Welcome to historic Florence with the 1891 Courthouse. Hi, I'm Jeff Serdy, District 5 Supervisor. I happen to be the chairman of the board this year, which is an honor. But it's also an honor to be working out of such a historic building.
By the 1890s, the town was booming so much, people really expected great things for the town. So the supervisors and the folks got together and said, we need to build a really nice courthouse, something that really will fit into our future. So they spent a lot of money, almost $34,000 to build this. Hired a really well-known architect from Phoenix, James Crichton, and he designed this. It's a really unique building, American Victorian, little leftover of the Victorian era, hoping to go into the future. It was originally cross-shaped or X-shaped, and each of those corners over the years has been filled in. The front is the most obvious, as you see really old pictures of it, and each of those northwest and the southwest corner were filled in around 1917. And already, very quickly from 1891 to 1917, we'd already outgrown the building and kept adding sections to accommodate the growth of our town.
I learn bits and pieces every time I'm down here. You don't know who are the historic figures that have been here. The jail used to be right in here where the supervisors meet right now. So what famous outlaws were tried and convicted here? We don't know. Well, I don't know. I think we're going to talk to somebody that does know, which is going to be very interesting too.
This building's gone through a lot of different transformations. As you can see, we're inside a room right now, but this used to be the outside wall. You can see these lovely old bricks, but it's amazing to think about. This was part of the jail area, and if you were to look way up high, you can see the little bit of the windowsill of the jail cells at one time. That's been closed in on this side, but if you go into the supervisor's meeting room, you can actually see the bars on the windows. And I think that's wonderful because you've got people there dealing with money, and I always think it's a great reminder that you don't want any hanky-panky because you could end up behind bars. The courtroom has had its fair share of exciting people in it. Pearl Hart, the lady stagecoach robber, in 1899, her trial was in that very courtroom. I imagine her walking up that beautiful staircase as she was heading in to testify and tell her sob story, which she batted her eyelashes apparently to help get the jury convinced that she was just a poor, innocent, misguided young woman. And then a couple sanity hearings were held in that same room, that courtroom. In 1933, Winnie Ruth Judd, the famous, they called her the trunk murderess, her sanity hearing was held in that room. And then you had Eva Dugan, the only woman executed in Arizona. Her sanity hearings were held in that same room. Eva Dugan was eventually found guilty and sent to the prison here, and that's where she was executed. And unfortunately, there were some miscalculations in her weight and the distance of the rope and so forth, and when she was hanged, she was actually decapitated. You can go to the museum and see some interesting details on all of those things, the actual nooses that were used at the prison.
Of course, there's the rumors of, is it haunted? Were there executions here? Are there bodies buried underneath?
Yeah, Jeff mentioned a few rumors, and particularly things about hangings. Well, I hate to tell you, there really has never been a hanging here or an execution. In fact, from research that was done many years ago, no one even actually died here that worked here or was even visiting. It does have a lot of ghost stories, though, from people that worked here, and it's possible. I know that there have been mice in here. I've heard that there were bats over the years, so those animals could probably make some noise on occasion. But the real story is that this was built on the town cemetery, and most of the bodies had been removed. You had to pay to have that removed and put in the new cemetery, but I think it's quite possible that some of those graves are still there. So perhaps some of those spirits are wandering the halls on occasion. Once the probation offices moved out, the building sat empty and started to deteriorate, and actually was the most endangered historic building in the state. And finally, Board of Supervisors Brian Martin looked at the building and said, we can't let this just disappear. And so he really was some of the energy behind getting it restored. And so finally, there had been a $100,000 grant to shore up the tower because it was getting so heavy it was coming through the roof. But eventually then they got the full amount of money to do the full restoration, and that was completed in 2013.
One of the first things I wanted to do was get up into that clock tower, and I had the privilege of going up there.
As you drive up in Florence, one of the first things you may notice as you get to the downtown is this building and the iconic tower. Not everyone is allowed up in the clock tower, but if you have the opportunity, you have a fantastic view, 360 degrees of this whole area. There are many rumors and stories about why it happens to read 1144. I recently read one that actually makes the most sense to me. It said that the workers up there were joking that it would almost be time to take a break. It would be lunchtime. But I believe it's pretty much what time it was when they were up there and had to put the face on. They ran out of money. It was budget constrictions. They just couldn't quite complete it. $34,000 in 1891 was a lot of money. And so I think they decided that, well, we'll just go without the clock. Everybody's got a watch, maybe. I know I think it was in 1952, the supervisors wanted to remove the tower because it was even then getting to be a problem and a worry, and actually voted to remove it, and the townsfolk protested, and so we managed to save it. Thank goodness. When they got up there to do the work on the tower was starting to come through the roof because it is so heavy. It's at several levels to it. And I think when they thought about how are we going to save this, they had to do all kinds of bracing and more support for it so we don't have to worry about it coming through the roof anymore. The iconic stairway, which when you walk in the door takes your breath away, I believe most of that is original. I know at one point the banister and the newel posts were painted, and someone realized that this was really nice wood underneath, so they went through stripping it and returning it back to its original wood. During the restoration, I understood that one of the carpenters put a request out in the town and asking people if they had any photographs taken inside the courthouse that they could use them to kind of either substantiate what they were doing or recreate it. And so apparently the banister, the newel posts, and some of those things were helped by those photographs. Many people said they had their weddings here because they had lovely photographs at the top of that staircase, because that makes a very nice wedding picture. One of the most famous people that was actually married here was Stan Laurel of the famous comedy team Laurel and Hardy, and this was his second marriage to a lady named Ruth Rogers, whom he later divorced and then remarried again, but that was in Las Vegas. Kind of in the Victorian era, stamped tin ceilings were very popular, and we have a really gorgeous one as you come in through the entrance there. The building is so fluid, you know, because of that curve. You just come in and it just feels like there's some place for me to go.
I think any time that you don't salvage our history, you're sorry later. Why didn't we save it? They burnt the White House in the War of 1812. Did we start a new White House? Let's make it modern. No, we want our White House. We want to preserve all of that. This is our county. We're proud of our history.
As Jeff said, it's an honor for people to be working in this building, and it's really exciting that so many aspects of our county government are centered here. Each of the rooms is still being utilized, and the building is still alive with people. To really preserve not only the building itself, but the history that is contained in it. And I think it's fortunate that Florence has this. It is our icon of Pinal County. Like Jeff said, it's a remarkable thing to have saved it.